Good morning, television neighbors. It's a sunny, clear, relatively warm morning here. Today's topic is going to be micro-productivity. It's something that I think I've practiced in some form or other for a long time. I think most of you have as well. But I recently heard a blog, actually a podcast, about the subject of micro-productivity that was being studied by Microsoft Research. And specifically that research was designed to help make the Office suite of programs more efficient, as well as personal assistants like Cortana. So usually Microsoft Research applies this across the next, the things they learn they apply in their next products that are like 5 to 10 years out. Sometimes it takes a long time for these ideas to mature, and other times you start seeing them in other places. So I would say after listening to this podcast that you're probably likely to see an emphasis on micro productivity in Microsoft products going forward. Recently, I think a lot about how to get the most out of my time. I view my personal time, a lot of people, they view their time at work, they view the value of their time as the hourly rate they get at work or something like that. At least when I talk with people about it, they say, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I could be making X number of dollars an hour. And that's definitely true. They have a certain value on the labor market, and as long as they're out there looking at other opportunities and stuff, that may track pretty well with what their current skill set is worth. But you can also, there's your free time. And to me, the free time is more valuable than my time at work, even though I don't profit off of it economically as much, for the sole reason that it's my time and I get to decide how I spend it. Whereas when you're in the workforce, you're often working towards a team objective, and sometimes that is not always in line for a while with your personal objectives. Hopefully only for a little while, but sometimes for large projects for a considerable amount of time. You end up in a technical field having to work with technologies maybe you're not all that interested in, things that you don't think are really going to help your career going forward. And if that persists, of course, people should start looking for other opportunities where their skill sets can be leveraged in a way that they're happier with as far as productivity goes. So, they're happy with their capacity to be productive because they're using the skill sets that they're best at. So recently I had an opportunity. I had a bunch of vacation left over at the end of the year. So I ended up taking almost the whole month of December off from work. And it was paid vacation and stuff. And so I was wondering, how am I best going to make use of this time? And what I did is I went and I looked through my list of tasks, and I figured out the things that I wanted to get done in that time. And then I made a list and started getting at it, and I even planned the first couple of days and stuff like that. But one of the issues was the people around me, my family and all these and friends and everything, they were still working through most of this period. So anything I wanted to do with them had to be around their schedules for a large portion of the break. And also there were emergencies that would come up, and ordinarily the emergencies would be taken care of in whatever way necessary because I was at work, so they wouldn't necessarily involve me unless it was a really big emergency and I had to leave work, or schedule something for a day where I was working from home and had more flexibility, or just maybe even leave work altogether that day and call in sick or something. So ordinarily these would be handled in other ways, but since I was available, I ended up being involved in helping through a lot more of these emergencies. So what I found is that at the end of the break, there were a lot of things that I wanted to get done, and I hadn't gotten them done, even though I had a larger block of time than most people get in their adult lives. I mean, I think, you know, some people might save up a month worth of vacation, and a lot of them, you know, they're gonna probably have enough warning that they can schedule a trip. There wasn't really anywhere I wanted to go that I was, you know, prepared to go. And then, like I said, my family had some obligations, and we could have gotten the kids out of school and stuff like that. But then there were the holidays coming up, and we wanted to be around family. So, you know, going on some epic adventure didn't seem like a good way to spend that. And to me, it felt like an opportunity to really get on top of some things, you know, task-wise that were nagging me. So anyway, what I found is that even with a month-long block, you don't really have that much spare time. I've also experienced this in between jobs before. You're never busier than when you're unemployed. You know, it's like, it's just a constant, you know, you're constantly working on your resume, working on your skill sets, you know, trying to, you know, going to networking events, all this stuff. It's just a really busy time. And also during quarter breaks from school, it's just, I remember if I took the summer off from school, my time would just fill up with a lot of different activities, and most of them weren't recreational. So at the end of the break, I made a list of the stuff that I absolutely just, I found out how much time I thought I could get to work on some things. And then I just kind of put them in the schedule, and I said, you know, I just need to power through these. And I did get a bunch of them done. But one of the things it taught me is that I need to stop putting things off until I have a big block of time. And that's where, you know, micro productivity comes in. A lot of the things that that was interesting, but not horrific.
Manual recording will now start.
A lot of the things that I do, I find that if it's a big task and it's not getting done, then there's some aspect of it that's just that I don't feel it's ready, or it isn't ready physically. So for example, if I wanted to build a chair, then one thing that might be holding me back is deciding on the type of wood and the dimensions of the lumber that I would need and how much of it, and, you know, figuring out, you know, the expense of buying the wood into the budget, and a couple of other factors. So I might, you know, for lack of doing those things, for lack of the preparation, I might end up putting off building the chair. And there are a whole bunch of other things like that in our lives as well. Now, sometimes it's more of an obstacle of a lack of knowledge. Like, there are a number of software development projects, there are ideas that I've had that I'd like to bring to fruition, but they're outside of my current skill set, and so I know that I'm going to have to take some time digging into how to do them. And from what I've heard, I've talked to a lot of people to just kind of get an idea for how big of a task it is. It sounds like they're not, you know, it's not pie in the sky stuff. It's not unheard of. It's stuff that's, you know, I'm gonna have a lot of options for support and stuff like that. So I don't think it'll be terrible once I get some time to work on it. But for whatever reason, I haven't had a chance to work on it, and I haven't scheduled it. I've had other priorities. And so those projects haven't made any headway. But anytime that I find that there's a project like that where I'm not making significant headway, one of the things that I find works really well is to analyze why, figure out what it is about the, you know, what it is about the project that is holding me up, and what's missing. And when I do that, I can break down the things into smaller tasks. So sometimes after you break it down into smaller tasks, you're still held up, and there's something about one of those smaller tasks that's holding it up. So by continuing to dissect, you know, break things down into smaller and smaller tasks, which is not necessary for everything. You know, I think that as long as it's a task you can progress on in a meaningful way, you probably don't need to break it down. And that's the thing that I've encountered in the workplace, is a lot of times, you know, just because there's a need to break down some tasks into smaller tasks to make progress on them, especially complex things, managers have put in place templates where all tasks need to be broken up into several key components and have a several paragraph write-up on, you know, what is anticipated and what's involved. And that can really be a waste of time in a lot of ways. Oh, that person is...
Manual recording will now start.
On the berm. Even people trying to merge. I didn't get their plate, but that was really obnoxious. And they weren't getting on from the ramp. They were actually passing. They got off the freeway onto the ramp, passed a bunch of people, and merged back in. So, so yeah, it's interesting that a lot. I think maybe some of these, like one of the reasons that I don't break things down more may actually be because I've had some bad experiences with it being a waste of time in the work sphere. Yesterday we actually had an interesting meeting at work where we sat down and we talked about some of the most important and challenging tasks on the sprint we're working on at work. And I thought it was really interesting because when we got everyone around the table and we started talking about it, and these were things that there was a sense of dread about how we were going to accomplish these. We got around the table and we started talking about it and talking about the ramifications and asking people quite directly, so what are your expectations? What would a completed task look like? Then defining that, you know, that one term used to describe that is the acceptance criteria. Once we defined that, then it was much easier to break down the task into what needed to be done, and it was much more apparent how to get from point A to point B on the task. And the interesting thing was, during the course of the meeting, the person who originally requested the task recognized that our team was not really the best team. You know, there were other teams in the company whose daily job it is to do the type of work that some of these subtasks required, and these are the things that were holding our team back. And so there was kind of a mutual agreement. While there are still some smaller tasks that we can move forward with, mostly troubleshooting and investigation, trying to figure out a bug that we're looking into. But there are a lot of things that other teams can try that will give us more information and more certainty and allow us to proceed forward. So that's an example of micro tasks in our environment, in my environment. And so on a personal level, you know, I have a couple of, you know, I try to limit my hobby projects so that I can focus on them. And when I go through and I clean up my workbench, I try to put all the stuff for one project with the other stuff. So I get like a little clear plastic shoebox thing that you can get at a, you know, dollar store or a hardware store or whatever. And I put all the parts in there. And then I sit there and I look at it and I'm like, okay, why is this not proceeding? Why is this in the way? Why did I not finish this? And sometimes it's because I didn't pick up a skill. For example, right now I'm working on building a small plastic kit, an N-scale kit of a building. And it's only about this big. And I've got all the plastic, like the main building core is glued together and everything, but the next step is to paint it properly. And that's one of the things. I got an airbrush, I have an air compressor, I've got the paints and stuff, but I've been learning about, it kind of bothers me that I don't have a process. And the reason is, when you use an airbrush, first of all, you have to go and prepare all the paints and everything, which may just involve opening up a bottle and shaking it up. Usually with a stir. I've heard it's bad to actually shake them because you can glue the lids shut with the paint. But yeah, preparing the paint, getting a good, you know, the right amount of it into a container, maybe diluting it for use with the airbrush, stuff like that. And then after that, using the actual airbrush, which I'm fairly confident of my skills. This is not, you know, it's not t-shirt art at the state fair or anything exotic like that. It's just kind of covering coats and gradients and primer coats and stuff like that. But it's going to take me in an area that I haven't really worked in before, which is this area of, coming up with a process for the airbrush. Now, I've actually done a lot of painting lately on other projects. I won't say a lot, but I've done some painting on other projects, and so it's given me a little bit more confidence with my spray booth and what it's capable of. And that, that's one of the things that was holding me back, is I didn't have a safe indoor place in the winter to do painting, I felt. And so I set up a spray booth, and that took me a while to get it right. So the projects I enjoy, I just feel like I could make a lot more progress on them if I'm more aggressive at recognizing like what little micro tasks do I need to identify so that I can take care of them and move forward with the project. So and that's one thing I talked a little bit about earlier, is that the whole reason that Microsoft Research is doing this is because they're trying to, they realize that people buy their software to be more productive. And if they can recognize how productivity really works, then they can build it into their products in the form of user interface changes, maybe user interface changes, maybe some wizards or guides, or just some user education in some other way, to kind of try to take people and bring their existing habits and comfort levels to the table, but gradually move them into more productive ways. I think that, for example, being exposed to Microsoft Outlook, which had Outlook tasks, for a while in my life, that's how I managed a lot of my tasks. And now I tend to manage my tasks in a way that's compatible with those. So it's pretty interesting to me that a lot of times, since I don't go and read scientific papers on this, a lot of times my exposure to new productivity techniques comes from the different products that I use. And since I use Windows primarily, I'm more likely to encounter productivity tools in that space. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of the things that they come up with in the micro productivity space, because what, that's another thing, is a lot of times at work, my tasks, when I look back at how I spent my time on them, a lot of times it's a very simple task, and the actual fix did not take very long, like 30 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe less. But I had to spend a lot of time getting things set up so that I could go and investigate what the problem was. And then after that, after investigating what the problem was, devise a solution and that kind of thing. So, but a lot of times the bulk of it is getting everything set up just right. I work on a pretty complex project, and I have to simulate the environment that the problem was detected in. And it was so bad on a recent project that I said, guys, I think we need. I tried to reproduce this issue, and I just had a really rough time doing it. And I was talking with a subject matter expert, and he said that he just sets up a whole machine with all these configurations. And I said, we've got a lot of tasks on this project that are going to need this kind of thing. So I'm just going to set up one of our machines to be kind of a shared test bed for this, so that everyone can save time, so they don't have to set up these different environments all the time. And it may seem obvious to do that to you, but it was kind of novel suggestion in my environment. And the team lead said, Mark, if you do that, I'll buy you lunch. And I thought that was a really strange response, because to me, offering to buy someone lunch for something, that's something that you're going to do for something that's really insurmountable and really difficult, I feel. And this task, we were going to have to do it anyway. There's someone trying to cross the street. with training a blind dog, and no one else seemed to realize that you have to yield to people crossing the street, especially blind people. I don't think she was actually blind because we're right near...
Manual recording will now start.
We're right near a place where it's Pilot Dogs, they call it, and it's a place where they train dogs to serve the blind. So you see a lot of dogs walking around here with people who may or may not be blind, who are training them. And sometimes it's kind of frustrating because they come up like they need to cross, and then I stop and yield, and then they just wave me by like, oh no, I'm just standing on the corner with my dog, you know, wearing, you know, with a cane and a seeing eye dog. So anyway, let's see, what was I talking about? I lost my train of thought because I got on a tangent that I think is interesting. It's the subject of training animals to help disabled humans. Maybe I should talk about that sometime more. You know, but yeah. So let's see, micro tasks. I don't know. I think I've pretty much said all that I need to say on it, but hopefully you'll think about it. I'll put a link to the podcast into the description, so if you feel like giving a listen to it. I thought it was pretty well done, and it's an exciting territory, and I hope that it you know, oh yeah, that's one of the things I was talking about, sorry. One more thing, Columbo style. Yeah, so I was talking about how I was setting up this environment to help us on this project, and to me it was not a to me this is something that I was going to have to do anyway. I mean, I couldn't do the work without having this environment set up for myself. So to me, the only difference was, once I get it set up, well, first of all, I'm going to set it up in a place where everyone can access it, and then once I get it set up, I'm going to share all the information about it with everyone else, and then I'm not going to destroy it, you know. And to me, that's kind of like, that would seem obvious that we're going to do that. So anyway, one of the things that I'm kind of excited about is I'm supposed to, I had an idea to do this for even more things, and it's an idea I've pushed for a while, but after I've been highlighting how much time I think it could save our team, and right now time is at a premium. Does it sound like your team, wherever you are, that you guys need more time and you need to be more efficient and more effective? Seems to be the driving force for all humanity, is at least all humanity who's trying to accomplish something, is to make their team more productive so that they can get more done. But yeah, anyway, so I'm going to be working on that. I'm kind of excited about it, and I hope that I'm able to make as much progress as I think I'll be able to do. And once again, when I suggested that I was going to do that, a different person kind of, you know, seemed skeptical that I would be able to do it. Not because of me, but because they're, you know, other people have tried and apparently it didn't go well. So I'm kind of wondering, I'd like to research that and find out what didn't go well about it, but very interesting. So anyway, that's it for me. It's the end for now. Sorry about getting distracted by blind people trying to cross the street, but I wish more people were, you know, just aware of crosswalk laws. If you see someone standing on a street corner, whether they're blind or otherwise, you should yield to them and let them cross, even if you don't have a red light in front of you. So anyway, that's it for me. If you thought it was interesting hearing about just some of my thoughts on micro productivity, and also the link that I'm going to link to in the description about micro productivity from Microsoft Research, then share it with someone who you think would benefit from micro productivity, or someone who gives you a lot of tasks that maybe you're not getting done, because a lot of times they spec out, you know, the what success means, and sometimes if they listen to the podcast, or you can summarize it to them, then maybe you can start working these things in to figure out why some tasks are not, you know, are facing obstacles, and maybe work through them. So, and of course, if you do try any of these and it does work for you, then please let me know, and because I'd love to hear about it in the comments, or there are other ways to reach me as well. All right, talk to you later. Bye.